Fun. Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video, and in this video, I'm actually joined by the legendary Rob Williams. Rob is actually known for his work in comics such as Suicide Squad, 2000 AD, Martian Manhunter, Unfollow, Doctor Who, Kingsman, Thanos, Star Wars, Class War, Wolverine, Punisher, Old Hans, among millions more. But he's very kindly agreed to come on for an interview and let me annoy him for the next hour or so. But like I said, such a professional opening.
Absolutely. I'm stunned.
Yeah,
I can't speak for anyone else.
You had to take a seat. Before he was standing up, but the second I started, he had to sit down. But yeah, so I imagine it's another sunny day wherever you're from.
It's a bit overcast. I'm just outside. I'm in Portishead, just outside Bristol, so I'm not, just across the ocean from yourself. Yeah, it's fine. Just been trying to do some work, and that's been my exciting day.
Yeah, but now it's going to get even more exciting because you get to listen to me spew on about comics for the next hour or so.
Absolutely.
It's your absolute pleasure. I'm very modest about. No, I'm only messing around. So many questions and so many different comics to cover. So my first question for you is, how did you get into comics?
I was always a comic fan and comic reader from when I was a kid, and I trained to be a journalist. I was working as a journalist, and I never really thought that you could do comics for a living. It was never an option because I just didn't think that's what happened. I thought people who made comics were Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and they lived in New York City. And then I got sort of I was working as a freelance journalist, and I thought I'd write a comic just for fun because I'd always enjoyed it, and it was very difficult to find comic scripts at that time, before the internet. And I think I got hold of a Sandman graphic novel, and there was a one of Neil Gaiman's scripts at the back, and you kind of went, oh, that's how you do it. So I wrote a script, and I went to a comic convention which was held in Bristol, which was where I was living at the time, and I gave my script to a comics company. Had no idea what I was doing, didn't write a pitch or anything. It was a full 28-page, I think, script, and they read it. A few months later, they rang me and said, we really like this, and that was Class War, which was the first comic I did. And they said, we want to publish it. So that was my in, but it wasn't something I was super chasing, simply because I just didn't think it was possible to do it for a living ever, so.
Yeah, so were you a fan of any specific comics growing up, or just getting in?
Oh, no, totally. I mean, X-Men, I loved this sort of, the classic sort of John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men run, and Paul Smith after that. And 2000 AD I read as a kid. I read Roy of the Rovers as a kid. I got weekly, the British weekly comics. I was getting those at the American comics at kind of the same time. And then, but the American comics, Marvel and DC, were really difficult to get. I grew up in South Wales in the Valleys, which is like a small little place. There were no big comic shops. I couldn't even dream of going to a Forbidden Planet or something like that. I just didn't. That blew. When I was about 15, I went to Bristol on a day trip, and there used to be a specialist comic shop in Bristol called Forever People, and I saw it. I still remember this so strongly. I saw it across the road, and sort of virtually ran across through traffic to get there, and I just couldn't believe that there was a shop which just was comics. That's all it was comics. And that day, I came home with like one issue of The Dark Knight Returns, and I came home with one issue of Watchmen. Ooh. And I just sort of, in terms of sort of, pivotal life experiences that day, and going into that shop and finding it by accident as well, was a real kind of like life changer. But yeah, 2088, X-Men, Marvel, DC Comics, whatever I could get my hands on. I just loved them as a kid.
Yeah, and you brought up two comics there, Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. It's such a shame those two comics didn't end up being influential or anything like that. Or
well, exactly. Alan Moore and Frank Miller. If you're going to buy two comics on your first ever trip into a comic shop, buying an Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons and Frank Miller, and the bar is set fairly high from that point.
So like, what was your first actual comic book work? Because I can't imagine you just went straight into 2000 AD and DC.
Well, it was Class War, like I said, but that was for a company called Comics, who were just starting up. We're a British company, but I was very fortunate. They wanted to, paid me up with an amazing artist called Trevor Hairside, who's now doing Deceased, I think, for DC. They did a beautiful job on the book. Really good paper quality, and it was just a beautiful looking product. And it was a superhero story. So when it came out, suddenly that opened doors for me in Marvel and DC. They read Class War, and and similarly 2000 AD, where there's a traditional route into 2000 AD whereby people have to write Future Shocks, which is small little 4 or 5 page stories.
Yeah.
And you do those over a bunch of time, and then do enough of them, then you get a series. And because of Class War, I was quite fortunate that Andy Diggle, who was the editor of 2000 AD at the time, he liked Class War, and he said, well, come and write for 2000 AD. So that kind of changed everything for me, really. I was just, it was kind of like first right place, right time, I guess.
Yeah, and so then how did 2000 AD come about?
Well, like I say, we were in a pub. Most amazing things happen in comics in pubs, or used to be in conventions, But
so if I want to be in comics, go to pubs. Okay,
just go to a pub, any pub, and spin around 3 times.
Does
and
an editor just drop down from the roof?
It's like Candyman. You just say it, and a magical editor appears and offers you your dream. No, I went out. Exactly, yeah. I went out in London with a bunch of the comics guys for a drink. Andy Diggle came along because 2000 AD at the time, I think, were virtually across the street from where comics were. This is up in Russell Square in London, and I was chatting, and Andy said, "Yeah, pitch for 2000 AD." So I did, and then I pitched my first story for 2000 AD, and then Andy Diggle left. He resigned. I don't know if he resigned because of my pitch. It might have been. Yeah. Unfortunately, Matt Smith took over as editor, and he liked what I was doing and carried on hiring me, and I've been working for 2000 AD ever since, really.
Brilliant. And I believe you got to write like kind of an apocalypse type of Mad Max Judge Dredd story.
Probably a lot of them are,
and and it was
of a kind.
Yeah, and so like you got to write for Judge Dredd a lot. So what's your favorite thing about Judge Dredd? Is it his beautiful smile or his costume?
It's how gregarious he is and outgoing and flamboyant. It's very much like RuPaul's Drag Race, but just
he's so talkative.
He is.
He's sick of hearing him talk. I'm like, come on, give the other people a chance, because speech captions.
It just bends your ear all the time. He does. No, it's I like writing. I grew up reading Judge Dredd, and like a lot of the jobs we get to do, I guess, if you're a comic writer or a comic artist, it's you loved reading these books. So if you get a chance to write a Judge Dredd or a Spider-Man or a Superman or something, it's a dream come true. It takes you back to being a kid, really, and reading those comics. You can't believe you're getting a chance to play with these characters, because kind of, I guess at its heart, that's what we're all doing. We're still kind of like playing with toys, basically, but just so that you get a chance to do it on a comic page instead.
Yeah, and so do you write Judge Dredd as like a more angry character, or do you just write him as this straight out grumpy character? Because, well, he is kind of lovely, you just have to kind of get under his skin.
He's really not. He's really horrible. It's just like, no, he's just, I like writing Dredd because he's old and grumpy now, and I'm old and grumpy now. So he's kind of like, in that sense, you get a chance to sort of project a lot of your grumpier things through him. It's just I'm less likely to go out and smash people across the face with a day stick, basically, or shoot them with a heat seeker. But no, it's amazing world. It's a sci-fi world. It's like you can tell any story in Judge Dredd's world. You can tell action story, satire, black humor. You can. One of the great things about it is and the creators of Judge Dredd, who is sort of John Wagner, people like John Wagner, Alan Grant, Carlos Esquerra, Mick McMahon, Brian Bolland, they sort of created this world where you can just tell any kind of story, and it's usually violent, and it's usually at its best has got some kind of a bit of wit about it as well, and those are things that kind of appeal to me for good or bad, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's your favorite 2000 AD character out of the good 500 that there are? 5 million probably.
Oh, it's probably Dredd. I mean, no, it is Dredd. Yeah, it's definitely Dredd.
I mean, it was a tie between Dredd and Robuster. I could see it in your eyes. You were having a hard time choosing.
It was not. I never really got on with Robuster too. Robusters. I loved Robusters as a kid. Sorry, I was thinking of Robo-Hunter. Sorry for a second. I love ABC Warriors. I love a lot.
Strontium Dog.
Strontium Dog. I got a chance to write one Strontium Dog story of a Christmas special just gone, so that was a thrill. No, it was just one of the great comics. It always was and remains. It's filled with, at its best, is filled with amazing characters.
Now you're about to see some more my brilliant questioning skills. If you could see two 2080 characters fight, who would it be?
Oh,
On the spot.
it would be Mechquake, who is a giant homicidal robot who just loves killing and pulling things apart and shouting big jobs, big jobs, big jobs when he does it. And it would be what else would be? It would be the Gronk from Strontium Dog, who's a very, very cute, hairy, furry little alien who basically has heart attacks and anytime anything slightly frightening happens. So I think Mechquake and Gronk fighting each other would be would appeal.
Yeah, and then he's on the ground and like he says Martha, and then they all become best friends again.
They just, how did you know Mechquake and Gronk had the same
Why
mother?
did you say that name?
Look at that for a plot twist. I know you're going to be writing these yourself.
You didn't even see it coming. It just came out of nowhere. And like, and then I don't know, like, and I don't steal my ideas. As you can see, they just come clean from the head. I didn't see that in any film or anything like that.
Some people are just blessed by genius.
I know. You know, what can I say? I'm modest, humble, perfect. I'm the full shebang, you know? So yeah. Oh, I don't even know how we got to that. But who's your favorite 2080 villain? Mean Machine Angel has to go to him.
Good question. Mean Machine's great. He's very straightforward. He just got a little dial on his head, which he puts up to 1, 2, 3, 4, and he headbutts you to death. That's a kind of sophistication with
you can get him. And little furry alien animals. So as you can see, very intelligent comic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what else we got? No, there's some great ones. Dredd's had some great ones. Judge Death. I mean, who, you know, this is a judge who decides that all crime is committed by the living. So he decides the only way to wipe out crime is to kill everyone. That's it's a solution, I guess.
Definitely a solution.
I mean, Torquemada, who from Nemesis the Warlock, who just hates all aliens because they're all impure. You know, there's a certain satirical underpinnings of what's going on in the UK at the moment. But there's loads.
Yeah, and is it like, did you ever expect that when you were younger and you were reading 2000 AD that you'd someday grow up to work in these comics? And is it a bit surreal to you to know that?
Yeah, it's amazing how you take things for granted when it's your norm, right? Which, you know, I've been fortunate enough to work for 2000 AD alone for about, I don't know, maybe 17 years, something like that. So it becomes like a job, but occasionally you do pinch yourself and you do kind of go, well, I can't believe I'm doing this. The kid, you know, if I was whatever I was, 12, 13 years old, you told me I'd be doing this, I'd never believe you. So yeah, that's kind of a lovely thing.
Yeah, and like I said, you're going to see some more of my brilliant segue skills, and you're not even going to realize it because it's going to be so smooth. But another comic you worked on was Unfollow.
Yes.
You see it. It just dropped down from the scene. Like, you were so surprised. Like, 1
I
minute.
don't know, what?
The next minute we were on to Unfollow, and you're like, shh. I think you whiplash a little bit after. I could see it.
I know, exactly. It's put me neck out. But yes, I did Unfollow was a comic I did for Vertigo, which is DC's adult arm in the States. Myself and Mike Dowling did it, and it was a thriller about social media and about pretty much about the evils of Twitter as much as anything, but just with a bit more murdery side
of course. So yeah, were you inspired by actual real events going on in social media? Because we don't get killed every day on social media, but you know.
No, it was just a general kind of. In all seriousness, it was the general's sort of, what's the word I'm searching for? Just the way that it was a bit sort of like Lord of the Flies on Twitter every day. People had followers. People were ganging up on certain people. There was sort of Twitter, you know, sort of. It just seemed like social media is supposed to make us all communicate. It was the whole point of social media, and it was supposed to make the world a better place. And all it seemed to do on a daily basis is show the worst aspects of human beings. So it was kind of that, and it was also inspired by the fact that I spend far too much time with my phone in my hand looking at Twitter as opposed to engaging with my family and things. And I kind of so it was. And the whole thing of like, we all have followers, the certain amount of followers. It's a really weird term, you know, almost like we're all religious leaders. We're trying to have people gangs to follow us. And Taylor Swift has millions of followers. So I kind of like the general idea of it was that in our story, the person who invented Twitter effectively is a billionaire, and he has cancer, and he hasn't got long left. So he wants to know who humanity really is. So he says to 140 random people, they're going to get an app on their phone. It's just going to pop up, and if you get it, it's like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. And it means when he dies, you'll get 140th share of his money. So happy days. Everyone's going to get millions and be millionaires if you get this app. But then he tells them at a party that right, okay, well, if one of you dies, then 139 of you will share my money. And if 139 of you die, well, one of you gets all of my money. And he just leaves it at that to the people. Now you or I can't speak for you, Daniel. For all I know, you don't go out a murdering of an evening, I imagine.
Oh, no.
Not on a weekday, right?
Why would I?
But most of us would just go, I'm not going to harm anyone. I'll just take my cut of the cash and be very happy. But all it takes is for one person to go, well, hang on, if I kill 139 of these people, I'm going to be. So it was a kind of a thriller where the numbers, the 140 would come down as every person got murdered, and there'd be where if you saw the number come down on your phone, you'd go, oh no, that's terrible, someone's died. But also part of you would think, oh, I'm a little bit richer. So it's it was all about showing the worst aspects of who we are as people.
Yeah, and I really like that. So do you prefer getting to work on your own characters? Because you could like kill a character off if you wanted to, but then when it kind of comes to like Judge Dredd, like you're not going to kill Judge Dredd, or you're on Suicide Squad. Well, I mean, despite the title, they do occasionally die, but when it comes to a pre-existing character, you can't exactly off them. But your own comic, do you feel a bit more freedom and you can do what you want?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's it's one of the appeals of doing create your own work, not just because you want to kill characters per se, but there's more freedom, and you can just tell any story you want and do whatever you want with the characters. And there is an art to sort of, if you're working on a book for Marvel or DC or 2000 AD, you've got to leave the toys alone to a degree, and you've got to kind of move the story on a little bit as well to keep people interested. But you can't kill Spider-Man. You can't turn around to Marvel and go, I've decided in this story we're killing Spider-Man, because they possibly won't be up for that. Create your own stuff is usually a lot of fun, but also traditionally you don't get paid as much for doing create your own stuff. So the nice balance is to do a bit of work for hire where you're working on other people's characters and you're doing your create your own stuff as well at the same time.
You're probably working on Judge, like, I want to kill someone, but I can't kill anyone. Here, how about I kill 100? I have 140 people to choose from. And so, like,
well, in fairness, Judge Dredd kills an awful lot of people. He's not shy. He gets his blood count there. But no, it's trying to balance out, do a bit of everything, and also hate to be practical, but you need to make a living as well. You got to pay the bills.
Yeah, I'm sure that, like, I'm sure Judge Dredd, it's just a big, it's a money pile, the money just keeps on flowing in terms of Judge Dredd.
Yeah. It's embarrassing, how much money we all make working for 2000 AD. Sorry, I said that with a straight face.
I can see your mansion in the background. So now I do have a few more. Yeah, I do have a few more questions. So, like, maybe for Unfollow, like, obviously a lot of characters die, and maybe in some other stories, but have you ever, kind of knew you had to, or you've killed a character and you kind of end up like, oh, I don't want to kill this character, or I regret killing this character?
Yeah, and especially if you care about the characters, then you do feel that, but sometimes they've got to go as well. You know what I mean? You just feel for the good of the story, and partly because you have this terrible balance whereby you kind of really like the character and you enjoy spending time with the character, and you assume that the reader does too. So you kind of go, well, if I kill this character, the reader's going to be kind of upset or angry or sad, and that's because at the end of the day, you want to make readers feel things. If you've got a baddie, you want the reader to hate that baddie, and if you've got a really lovely character, you want the reader to love that character. So if you have the baddie kill the character who's lovely, then suddenly ideally you want people turning pages going, oh no, you know, and then you've done your job properly. But sometimes sometimes that involves killing off characters who you really like as well, which does actually make you quite sad at the time.
Yeah, you're just sitting there like, oh, I can't be about to kill this character. This story sucks, and you just throw your script out the window.
I do that a lot anyway. That's fine. Yeah.
It's sent off to the editor. I don't need it anymore. You just throw it like a boomerang. And speaking of boomerang, some more.
Hang on.
No one saw it coming. So you also got to work in the Suicide Squad. I'm gonna pat myself on the back for that beautiful.
Yeah, that was amazing. Actually.
I know, and like it was so out of left wing. You know, I just put these two things together. And so getting to work in the Suicide Squad, what was that like? You just get a phone call from an editor at DC, and it's like, here, want to come do this?
I was doing Martian Manhunter for DC at the time, and which was I was really enjoying and seemed to be going down fairly well. And then this is how it works at the time, or did at the time. I got an email, I think, from Jim Lee's assistant, and they said, "Oh, Jim wants to have a chat with you tonight." And I was like, "Oh God, what have I done?" So Jim rang, and then Jim was under the impression that someone in editorial had told me that he wanted to do Suicide Squad with me, but no one had. So Jim was talking about this, and I didn't know what he was on about, to be frank. So I was doing one of those things of like, I'll just make noises like I know what he's on about, and at some point I hope penny will drop. So I'm going, and he was going, "I think we could do this and we could have a lot of fun with this." And I was going, and I was thinking, why is he telling me this stuff? It's very nice of him to be telling me this stuff. And then I kind of, about 5 minutes in, I kind of went, "Hang on, can I stop you a sec, Jim? Are you saying you're drawing this? Is this Suicide Squad? Are you drawing it?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Has no one told you that I'm drawing it?" And I was like, "No." He said, "Has anyone told you that you're writing it?" No. So that's how it happened. Yeah. I mean, fortunately, I didn't manage to sort of destroy the whole thing there and then on the phone conversation.
Bad way to find out.
No, it was amazing. And I couldn't, I think Jim was at the time was a big fan of, a big proponent of Unfollow, which was as well. He really liked Unfollow. So I think, Jim just the movie was coming out, not the new one, obviously, but this was the first Suicide Squad.
David Ayer, yeah.
And
so they were the lineup, or did you get to choose the lineup of characters, or was it the characters from the movie?
I had a sort of, I was told, I think when I took it on, that Harley, Deadshot, and who else?
Captain Boomerang, Katana.
No.
Killer Croc. Enchantress. There's like about 1 million members we could go through list by list.
I can't remember. There was, anyway, Harley and Deadshot, I was told, had to be in it, and there was one other had to be in it, and I can't remember who. And then I suggested a few others, one of which I remember didn't make it in. And then we had some kind of phone. No, it was I had a weird thing. I was going to put Jenny Sparks in it from The Authority, actually. And then we had some kind of phone meeting, and Jeff Johns was in on the phone meeting, and Jeff said, "Look, I think considering this is the movie lineup, I think it's a really good idea that you just do the movie lineup in this, because it's going to confuse people otherwise. The film's coming out the same week as the comic." So that's why we ended up with pretty much the movie lineup. But I pretty much had that lineup in mind anyway, to be honest with you, apart from one or two little others.
Yeah, and so like, is it hard for you to write for a full team of characters? There's say 5 members, and as opposed to writing a comic about one character, that's probably, but you have to fit all these characters into 24 pages per issue, and you're like, okay, we need to give Killer Croc a singular moment. We need to give Deadshot. So is that a challenge for you, trying to fit them all in?
Yeah, it's hard actually. Writing team books is hard because it's anytime you put your focus on one character, you are immediately aware that you're ignoring the other characters. So I found it. Yeah, I did find it. It was. I don't think I'd done a team book before in the traditional sort of superhero sense. So it was. It is quite challenging. I got all kinds of respect for people who pull that off over a long period of time. I did 50 issues of Suicide Squad, I think, or not far off 50. And it's hard work trying to tell engaging stories with a number of characters over a long period and keep all those sort of plot lines rolling.
Your first team book being the Suicide Squad, that's not bad going. It could definitely be worse, you know?
It is, but then you have the thing. The funny thing is with Suicide Squad is, and I'm not writing anymore, so I can say this. The challenge with it is it's called the Suicide Squad, so someone should die, right? So I think in my initial pitch, I think I said that I kind of went, look, we've got to kill someone in the first issue. So they went, okay, and I said, well, let's kill Boomerang because. So in my first issue, if you did read it, they come across the Suicide Squad stumble across General Zod in an undersea prison, and General Zod with his eye beams just first thing he does is just incinerates Boomerang and just leaves his 2 boots with stumps basically. And I was like, yeah, okay, great, because I at the time I wasn't really that interested in. I thought Boomerang was a bit of a stupid character, which turns out I was wrong. And then they DC editorial said, well, you can't kill Boomerang. You've just got to, and it's like, well, it's called the Suicide Squad. Someone's got to go, Yeah. So then as you go on through time, there were things, where editorial would say, well, we'll add some new characters and kill the new characters. And then you kind of go, well, if you do that, if you bring in 2 new characters, hello, they're just like red shirts in Star Trek. Everyone knows they're going. So there's not really any huge drama. So there's always this balance with Suicide Squad, right, in it, where ideally, it's the Suicide Squad. A couple of them should be getting it. So it looks like the James Gunn has done a really great job of this in the trailers of a new movie, because you suspect quite a few of those aren't making it out the other side.
But I think luckily there wasn't Condiment King on your team, or else no one would have died. And then it would have just been, the story would have been bad, because he would have just saved the day every time.
And there would have been a tasty, savory aspect to every issue, which would have been lovely.
Yeah, brilliant. The artist would love getting to draw ketchup, mustard, switch up a bit of mayonnaise, And for some reason, DC haven't replied to my 800-page Condiment King strip. I'm not sure what that's about. I'm sure their email's just busted. It's something like
just keep trying.
Yeah,
I mean, they're getting there. They fell off their chairs when they read it to us, and they haven't been able to recover yet to get back to you.
I'll live with that certain bit of ignorance. So if I said to you, you could add an additional character to the Suicide Squad, out of all ever, like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, or Dredd, if you could add anyone to the Suicide Squad, just looking back for fun, who would it be?
Oh, what would I put in Suicide Squad if I was
Detective Chimp?
No, no, I don't know. It'd have to be someone you could actually kill. I was thinking about who, and then I'd kill them off. Who do I find quite annoying?
Just the characters you don't like.
Yeah, exactly. But then that's kind of cheating as well. I guess it would be fun to make. No, I don't know. You've stumped me, Daniel.
Yeah, Judge Dredd killed them all if he was a part of them.
I mean, there's kind of like, was his Matter Eater lad? I mean, he'd be kind of fun from the Legion of Superheroes. That's a particularly bad one.
Penny Plunderer. He just goes into banks and robs all the pennies. It's perfect.
Yeah, you could do those, but it's just like, I don't know. I haven't got an answer for that. There's too many.
Dan, I cut you off there. You see, I stumped you with one of the bigger questions. But now here's another very big question. If you could see Suicide Squad go against any other team in the history of comics, who would it be?
Oh,
you have to answer this one now. I've put you in a dead end.
I know. I'm just any other team in the history of comics ever.
Guardians of the Galaxy, Justice League, the Defenders, Avengers. I just list them all. X-Men.
God, I don't know. You asked your questions are too hard. There's too many possibilities.
I put you in a writer's block.
I know. It doesn't take much, as you can see.
I think I broke you.
I know. Well, trust me, I was broken anyway. I don't know. I'll say Fantastic Four, because I love Fantastic Four. I think if you could do like a big Jack Kirby, negative zone kind of adventure with a Suicide Squad teaming up with the Fantastic Four and fighting them and eating them, then yeah, that'd be amazing.
And I'm sure they'd all be best friends. So yeah, didn't you get to collaborate with Dan Abnett for a few issues in Atlantis?
Yes, yeah.
That kind of create a challenge?
Not really. I mean, because Dan, Dan writes for 2000 AD, and I've met Dan at things over the years, and Dan was super easy to work with. And it's just, I mean, I've co-written with a lot of people over the years, and touch wood, it usually works out. I mean, whether or not they'd feel the same way about it, but it's, you just get on the phone and you just kind of you start knocking story ideas back and forth, and then you just kind of, you partition it out where you just kind of go, okay, well, if you're having issue 1, you have act 1, I'll have act 2, you have act 3, and it just kind of works really. But
Luckily,
yeah,
you
I mean,
tried to have King Shark eat Mera or something like that. That probably wouldn't have landed so well.
well, the only trouble with things like that is, I don't think I was reading Aquaman at the time, and it was like, oh, I gotta gen up on Aquaman. It's to find out
Oh
what
yeah.
what characters are, what they sound like, what their voices are like, and things. But editorial are usually good in those circumstances. They'll send you PDFs to get you up to speed. No, Dan's great. He's a really good writer, and yeah, it's fun. It's just
Oh, sorry, go on.
no, I just remembered the first time I had to do that was I was working for Marvel, and then we were doing a mini series, and then I had to do a you get on these conference calls, and there was Rick Remender, Jeff Parker, and Stuart Moore and Jonas Strander, and I think I was having a panic attack basically during the call. And then the moment the call finished, I genuinely had to go and have a lie down because I was just so exhausted, because I'd never done that before. And suddenly I was thrust into like this thing of, is you and 4 very famous writers, and you've just got to all collaborate, and you've got to actually come up with some vaguely good ideas.
Yeah, but I'm sure you were just a crazy Quilt, I believe he's called. The best comic book character. You see, I think his power is that he throws quilts at people. So
there you go. I mean, why you're not doing this instead of me, I don't know.
Are you sold? Are you sold immediately?
Absolutely. I think you should step in and take over. I mean, do you want to do this for a living, by the way, Daniel? I presume
Yes.
you do you?
Yes,
okay.
but I don't take it I'd be very good at it. But yeah, no, I'll just say
good so far.
Oh, well, thanks so much. But I think I wouldn't send him an 800-page script, because that's it's not enough time to really define him. It'll have to be 8,000 just to fit it all in.
And I don't think you should compromise on those demands. I think you've got your artistic integrity, and I think that's stick to it.
I'll go full Alan Moore with it and detail each caption like as very detailed as I can. So yeah,
you're gonna have to grow your hair a lot longer to do that. Are you willing to do that? Do you think?
The sacrifices we make for our art,
right?
We might just have to. So yeah, like Suicide Squad, do you have to do much research for certain characters? Like maybe they'd give you a character and you'd have to, I don't know much about this character, I might have to go find out more.
Yeah, and especially with ones, there were certain ones I knew, a fair bit about before, and then there was others. Again, like say, I had a really good editor at the time called Andy Coury, and Andy would sort of go, "You should really read this story. You should read this story," not because there were certain stories which were kind of like went to the heart of who the characters were, and then there's and then like I say, sometimes though with jobs like that, you get surprised, because as I said, I didn't think anything of Captain Boomerang coming on, because he's called Captain Boomerang, for God's sake. Come on, it's a stupid name. And I said, well, let's kill him off. And then they wouldn't let me. And I ended up starting to write Captain Boomerang, and just grew to love him and found him such an amazing character, and really sort of I don't know if he had hidden depths, because he's quite shallow. I think that's what I liked about him. He was kind of like the character who could say things that no other character could get away with saying.
That's funny, because John Ostrander said the exact same thing. Like he got on, he did Captain Boomerang, and then he became one of his favorite characters.
Yeah, I grew so fond of Boomerang, and just still, that is the one aspect, now I'm out the other side of my Suicide Squad run is in the past. I look back, and he is absolutely by far the best character in the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, but you got to use both Killer Croc and King Shark, right? In a few issues.
King Shark was only in the Dan Abnett one, and now I've seen the James Gunn trailer. Why didn't I use King Shark more often? King Shark's awesome.
Who wins in a fight, Killer Croc or King Shark?
Definitely King Shark, I think, but Killer Croc would give a good account for himself. But I loved writing King Croc as well, because basically I did a thing where him and Enchantress had a Beauty and the Beast kind of love affair, a romance. And I enjoyed writing that. That was some of my favorite stuff in the book as well. And again, it's kind of, trying to kind of pull hidden depths out of horrible characters. Really. You know, find something sweet even in someone like Killer Croc who just eats people all the time.
His teeth is a metaphor for happiness.
Indeed.
Yeah, they're so long. It's meant to represent a long and happy life, something like that. Just chuck it in.
Yeah, there you go. Job done.
Yeah, and like I love Killer Croc. And there's been a few different ones. I don't think it was your one, but there was one where he threw up a lot, and that was just awesome.
Oh, that was mine. Yeah, that's the level of
that
sophisticated humor I go for. They were being dropped from space in a sort of drop ship, and basically just Killer Croc would just barf and barf and barf, and he was going to drown inside his own spacesuit because it was just filled up with. So that is the level of sophistication I brought to Suicide Squad.
Exactly. And you got to touch on this. You got to use some other characters like General Zod and all these. So did you have a favorite guest star you got to use? Maybe a superhero or just in any comic?
In Suicide Squad, yeah, Zod was amazing. I mean, it's just like I basically wrote him like he'd gone insane from being stuck in the negative zone for thousands of years. So when he came out, he was just ranting like a sort of egocentric madman, which is what he is. So he was fun. I enjoyed him. He operated on his own brain as well, with his own, used a mirror to sort of just use his eye beams on his own brain. So, you know.
That was brilliant.
What else? I mean, I got to write Batman a few times as a guest star in Suicide Squad. I always enjoyed writing Batman. That was fun.
He's another very talkative character, just like Judge Dredd.
Very much so. Captain Cold was fun. I did he popped in. Yeah, Captain Cold was he was a guest star in one arc of Suicide Squad that I did, and enjoyed writing him. He was great. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, all those DC characters, just like I said earlier, if you grew up reading these comics, you do feel genuinely like, oh, I get to play with him, or write her for a little while, and it's just it's a treat.
And so my last question on the Suicide Squad: did you write them as criminals or reluctant heroes, or how did you write? What was your thought process? You said these guys are just pure criminals.
They're criminal. They're horrible. They've done terrible things. And yeah, but the whole thing is, I mean, I love shows like The Sopranos and sort of Breaking Bad, which is just keep you flipping back and forth with your sympathies, because just when you think, oh, I really like this character, what a lovely character, they do something appalling to someone else, and just because they are criminals and murderers, and similarly, just when you think they're horrible, oh, what a horrible character, you have them doing something sweet, and I think sort of finding hidden depths in them is part of the trick of writing Suicide Squad, really, but you can't ever get sucked into thinking, oh, it's just another superhero team, because they're not. They're a bunch of supervillains. They're just horrible people.
Yeah, and what color is Killer Croc?
I'm going green.
Speaking of green, Martian Manhunter was another comic he worked on. Hey, I got him on it. He didn't even see it coming, straight out of nowhere. These segue skills on point today.
Woo! Yeah.
Like, you might have to take a minute, take a breath. So yeah, getting to work on Martian Manhunter. I believe that was during the New 52, wasn't it?
No, was it? No, it was just after. It was Rebirth.
It was Rebirth. All these DC events start to blend after a while. So yeah, how did that come about? Was it the same as Suicide Squad?
How did it come about? I did a book called The Royals, Masters of War, which was published by Vertigo, and I think the DC guys like that. And then Dan Didio asked me to pitch for Martian Manhunter, if I remember right. And what did Dan say to me at one point? He goes, look, he goes, no one ever buys Martian Manhunter, so just have fun with it. So I thought that was kind of a good approach, and I kind of did. So I pitched something which is a little unusual as a result of that kind of sort of fatalistic sense of freedom, but it wasn't going to last long as a book.
My favorite character in the book,
which is,
take a guess. Who's the one that Mr.
Biscuits?
Mr. Biscuits. How did you know?
Well, that was the thing, because like I'd been out in Los Angeles to the DC office, and we were talking about Martian Manhunter, and I kind of had what I wanted to do, and I think the editor at the time was kind of, you could tell, was a little bit like, ooh, I'm not sure this book's going to last long. And then I was at the airport waiting for the plane to come back, and I just was came up with Mr. Biscuits, and I did start when I started writing him. I was thinking they might fire me. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna publish this book at all. And Mr. Biscuits just worked, and I thought he worked, and he was just really good fun. But it was, for people who didn't know, it was the Martian Manhunter was missing, and we introduced about 4 different new characters. It was like a very different team book, and it was like, but none of these characters you met before. And as we followed them in the story, you found out that they were all the Martian Manhunter was the twist. I've spoilt the twist, and one of them was a very kind of a sort of a very, what? How would you describe Mr. Biscuits? He was just a huge, gangly, tall alien who
kind of, he wore like a jazz suit.
Yeah, and a fedora and a cane, and he wore a bag over his head like the Elephant Man. And he was obsessed with biscuits. He just loved biscuits.
Who doesn't, you know?
I'm
sure that was just a little part of you saying, you know what, I love biscuits. The deadline's in 10 minutes. Yeah, biscuit man.
You might be right. Yeah. But it was like, it's one of those things sometimes. I think some of the best and most exciting comics sometimes come out of when you're pushing it, you know, and to the point where you think you might get fired as well. But I felt like we weren't giving people the standard Martian Manhunter comic, you know. It was trying to do something a bit fun and a bit surprising, keep people off balance.
And I couldn't believe at the end when it was Martian Manhunter versus Mr. Biscuits, and he called Marta, and I was like, oh, I see now. I know how this all ties together. And then Captain Boomerang appeared.
Biscuits! That's what he shouted. He goes, your mother was Biscuits too?
Why did you say that name?
They were all biscuits. The twist at the end, they were all biscuits.
And then I'm a biscuit, and I just rip off my mask, and then you rip off your mask, and then the person watching this rips off their mask, and we're all biscuits.
We're all biscuits. So no, it's a deep-seated theme.
It's been a dream.
All my work. Yeah, whatever it is, whatever I'm writing, there's always biscuits. Yeah, but no, I really enjoyed doing Marshman. It was good fun.
Yeah, and so what was, like, I discussed that with John Ostrander because I'm super professional, but the thing he wanted to emphasize the most was that Martian Manhunter and Superman were 2 different characters, because, you know, they do get kind of confused a lot. So what was the thing you wanted to emphasize the most while writing Martian Manhunter? What was your main goal? Was it to kind of humanize him or just make people like him more? Or...
No, it was the opposite. It was the fact that he was alien, and that was the thing, that the fact that he would, just in the general idea that we had these 4 characters who were secretly all Martian Manhunter, but they didn't know they were Martian Manhunter as well. So if he was like, as a defense mechanism, he'd split himself in 4 and just become 4 different personalities. And it's like, that type of stuff just seemed like human beings wouldn't think to do that, but he's an alien. So he's not, Superman is an alien, of course, but Superman crash landed in Kansas and was raised by humans. Martian Manhunter was raised on Mars, and it's a totally different culture. So it was just trying to make it a bit of a way out sci-fi book, and trying to just emphasize that he's not just a green version of Superman in a cape or anything. You know, I think it's very easy to write Martian Manhunter like that, which doesn't take into account that he's in our terms, we can't really get into his brain because it's not like ours.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, being from Mars would do that to you. But was his kind of design, was that designed by the artist of the book?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I described what Mr. Biscuits. I had a very clear image of what he looked like, and I described that to the artist who drew it really beautifully. It was a guy called Eddie Barrows, who's a terrific artist. And then there was a kind of redesign of what Martian Manhunter looked like at the time, but I think that was before we came on the book. I think that was just part of the New 52, I think. Yeah, there was that era with New 52 where they just redesigned a little bit all the classic DC heroes. So yeah.
And that design of Martian Manhunter is definitely one of my favorites. But so, like, when it came to Martian Manhunter, like you said, Dan Didio said to you, he's kind of an obscure character, so do what you want with him. So did you feel a bit more freedom? Because they're both DC books, but Suicide Squad at that time, they were pretty big because they were like probably one of the biggest things in the comic book world. So did you feel a bit more freedom on Martian Manhunter? Because like he said, he's not a character that's going to sell much books. So did you feel you could do what you want?
Yeah, there was way more freedom on Martian Manhunter because I, in one sense, in a kind of nice sense, I felt like no one cared that much, which sounds weird because they obviously cared, but I think there was an assumption that Martian Manhunter books don't last very long anyway, so just go for it. Just I think Suicide Squad was a totally different thing because the movie was coming out, Jim Lee was drawing it. It was gonna sell huge, for number one. I think we sold something like 350,000 copies, if I remember right. And there was a lot more editorial focus on the book as a result, because of the movie. It was one of their big things that summer. You know what I mean? It was like so. So I think my pitches and my scripts sort of went through a lot of set of eyes that perhaps wouldn't have, on a book, on a smaller, more obscure character book. So yeah, there was a lot more freedom on Martian Manhunter, and also we were doing it when DC had moved from New York to Los Angeles. So I think a lot of the DC energy was just on the move, and things like that. So we were allowed to sort of go a bit mad with it, really.
Yeah, and Martian Manhunter has so many powers, but he can't time travel. And speaking of time travel, you also got to work on Doctor Who. I did it again. I can't be stopped. I'm never going to die. I'm invincible.
You are.
I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah. No, you should be. These segues are just like, they should be sort of shot into space.
Where they come from. It's like a film. Exactly. Oh, look, you're pulling them out of nowhere. So yeah, Doctor Who, how did that come about? Was that just another email or?
Oh, what was that? Doctor Who was
carrier pigeon, maybe.
No, the Titan carrier pigeon. No, it was myself, another comic writer, Simon Spurrier, and another comic writer called Al Ewing. We had co-written a story for 2000 AD called Trifecta, which had gone down really well. And again, that was three of us co-writing. So I think Titan came to us and said they wanted us three to take on Doctor Who.
Wow.
And doing it the same way, co-writing it. And let me think now. I think Cy Spurrier was too busy, so just Al Ewing and I co-wrote the first series of Doctor Who for Titan, and it was the 11th Doctor, so it was Matt Smith.
Yeah.
And then Al was too busy, and the second season Spurrier came back on, and it was me and Cy Spurrier co-wrote the second series of the book. So yeah, it was just like, it was a huge, again, just I keep on repeating the same thing, but just a huge amount of fun and a complete mind scramble, because it turns out time travel stories are really hard to write, really confusing to write.
I remember I read one of your Doctor Who stories in school, and I thought it was horrible, worst story I've ever read in my whole entire life. Now, moving on, money messing around. Believe it or not, I very much enjoyed it. So yeah, Doctor Who. So is the 11th Doctor your favorite Doctor?
Tom Baker is probably my favorite Doctor. But
watching the show.
Say again, sorry.
Sorry, did you grow up as a Doctor Who fan?
Yeah, I was. I must admit, I was never sort of like. There are people who love Doctor Who, and I very much like Doctor Who, and I occasionally love Doctor Who. But I didn't grow up with it was like I was a super duper duper fan. But I'd get Doctor Who Monthly magazine and I'd watch it. I like Tom Baker. I wasn't so keen on Colin Baker. Because I had an amusing anecdote, again coming back to the Killer Croc story. I had a fever. I was really unwell when I was a kid, and I was lying on the sofa, and Doctor Who was on. I always remember this. And Colin Baker came on, and he had this multicolored jacket, and I saw Colin Baker's jacket, and I vomited basically the moment I saw his jacket. So it was like many years later, I took my kids to the Doctor Who exhibition in Cardiff, and they had all the Doctor's uniforms out on mannequins. And I got the Colin Baker's one, and I started to feel a bit unwell just looking at it. It was a really weird kind of like sort of sensory memory coming back to me. So yeah, I have some Doctors I like more than other Doctors, put it that way.
Yeah, you could have just said, "Oh, I was throwing up because I'm writing a comic where one character throws up a lot, so it's for research."
Exactly. I'd like to say I didn't throw up at the Doctor Who exhibition in Cardiff. That wasn't me. No, I like Matt Smith a lot. I mean, I really enjoyed him as Doctor Who. I thought he was.
Yeah, and like speaking of research, I put in a lot of research. I made the sacrifice instead of doing my homework to read comic books. I know. What can I say? I'm a soldier, you know. So when my maths teacher emails me, I'll just pass on the email to you why I didn't do my maths homework. Just say you worked on Suicide Squad. I'm sure I'll get away with it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, what's the worst that could happen? But yeah, I really like that Colin Baker from what I've watched. I think he was a brilliant doctor, best doctor. Well, he's actually somehow in my top 5. So yeah, did they just say to you, do the 11th Doctor, or did you get a choice of any Doctor?
No, it was the 11th. The 11th was on telly at the time, so it was kind of yeah. We were getting to do the Matt Smith book, and it was and actually those first 2 series with of the comic that we wrote. I think I'm genuinely really proud of those books. There's some really interesting stuff in it. I think we were there was a good energy about it, and we were really trying to push it. And then there was things like, I mean, I did one issue where I thought it'd be an interesting idea. The time would run backwards through the comic, but no one knows this apart from the Doctor, who realizes. So basically, you open the comic, and the first page was page 22, and then it went back to page 21 and 20. Time was going in reverse every page, and then at some point, the Doctor goes, "Hang on," and then he's trying to change it and move forward to save the day, while the timeline is going backwards. I thought it was a really clever idea, the type of thing you should do in a Doctor Who comic, totally. And then writing it was I think, the hardest script I've ever had to write in my entire career, because
So
suddenly
much
I had to have, the time was going backwards for everyone else, but forwards for him, and then he had to. It's just like, it got to a point, we got very close to the deadline with that, and I said we might have to scrap this entire issue, because I just don't know if this makes any sense to anyone whatsoever.
And you're sure it was the Colin Baker suit that was making you sick, not maybe all the numbers.
Yeah, I know. But I think this is the thing. A lot of Doctor Who comics, are fun, and he turns up in a place and goes on an adventure. But the ones that actually get really timey-wimey, they're hard to do.
So yeah, like, speaking of Doctor Who, do you have a favorite Doctor Who villain or Doctor Who bad guy?
Got to be the Master. Yes,
Oh, I
absolutely.
love the Master. Which version, the John Sims or the Michelle Gomez? The original.
Michelle Gomez was amazing. I mean, there's the Roger Delgado one that I sort of, when I was a kid, sticks in the memory. I thought Michelle Gomez was fantastic. And then in the comic, we did I don't know if this is canon or not, we did a Time War story whereby you got to see the incarnation of the Master who's in the Time War, and it was like a creepy. You'll appreciate this. It was a creepy little child, basically, who made amazing segue story. No, this is not true. No.
No. For a second, I was like, no, really? Oh, speaking of children, I myself have been aware so well.
No, we did do, in all seriousness, we did a version of the Master, which was like a terrifying, creepy little child in the Time War. And I thought that was really cool. And I don't know if that is canon or not, but we like to think it is, because we got quite excited writing that story. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Masters. I was one of my favorite. I think the first time I saw him was the David Tennant, John Sims one, where he died in the 10th Doctor's arms. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I love the Master now. Then he came back, which is awesome. And then there's like been a million different Masters. Yeah, but so are you still a fan of Doctor Who? Do you still watch it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm always. I mean, I think my relationship with it is, I'll watch one episode and go, I love this show, this is amazing. I'll watch another episode and go, it doesn't really work. And it's always seems to have been that way for me with Doctor Who. Just when you're there going, oh, there's 2 amazing episodes back to back, there'll be an episode that I'm not that fussed on. So I always go up and down with it, basically. But I'll always watch it, and I'll always be a fan. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So, come up with a segue for this. I need to just give me a second. I can think of one.
I look away.
You look away. I have to do the math in my head. So Doctor Who, Time War, King. Oh, Doctor Who. He's English. Okay, yeah, I have it now. I have to.
Okay.
Doctor Who is English, and you also worked on a comic about English spies called Kingsman. Not my best work.
Doctor Who isn't English, though, is he? He's from Gallifrey. Okay. All right. Well, I'll let it slide.
He's technically. Well, I mean, it depends on which version you're talking about. Most of them are English.
Well, no, a lot of them are Scottish, right? So you got
2.
Okay. Has there ever been an Irish Doctor Who?
Not yet. Disgracefully.
I don't think there's ever been. Has there been a Welsh one? I don't think there's been a Welsh one.
David Tennant's Welsh, I believe.
He's Scottish, man.
Peter Capaldi.
Scottish.
Come on, then there's not been any Welsh characters then. God, there's so many. You're such a fusspot, you know. I'm trying to come up with brilliant segue skills. Like I said, I'm so severely under.
All right, I'm sorry. I've spoilt your entire show. I do apologize.
It's too late. The damage is done. I'm gonna go cry in the corner now. I'm gonna burn your pages. No, money that's done. So yeah, Kingsman. How did that come about?
Mark Miller asked if I'd be up for doing it, and it was before the second Kingsman movie was coming out, and it was it was so just a really fun job, and I got to work with Simon Fraser on it again. Simon Fraser, who drew the Doctor Who comics, and so whether Mark had seen what me and Simon had done on the Doctor Who books and liked it, I don't know really, but he just said, do you want to do a Kingsman story for 5 issues? Just like, yeah, absolutely.
Nah.
Yes. So I'm not interested in that. I got much more interesting things to do. Yeah, it was I was very happy to do it, and
that's written by Mark Miller. If only some of his comics were turned into films or something like that, maybe I'd know him.
Well, I mean, if he keeps plugging away, one day he might sort of make a living. He might be able to make a living out of this job, I suppose, somehow.
Yeah, well, here's hoping. As long, we have to keep fighting the smaller guys, such as Mark Miller, all these other smaller creators, and it's our pleasure to do so. So yeah, did you treat it as kind of like a spy espionage comic?
Yeah, but again, I mean, I think one of the cool things about Kingsman, the first one, that he and Dave Gibbons did as well before the film, it's got that sort of, it's working class. It's got that class distinction thing in it, whereby sort of you had a working class kid from the States who suddenly is thrust into a James Bond role, and so it's not the Bond was always like this cool upper class kind of. It felt that way. Went to the best schools or whatever,
Yeah.
So that's the idea, right? It's a working class James Bond. So you get a chance to have all the ridiculous Bond fun, but also you get a bit of sly humor in there as well, a bit of black humor, and you get some class related sort of themes in there as well. Yeah. It's what's not to like, really.
Exactly. And so you also got to work on Old Haunts. So what was that like? I think you also got to do that with Ollie Masters.
Yeah, Ollie and I co-wrote Old Haunts, came up with it together. Basically, the idea of Old Haunts is it's a gangster ghost story. It's what if 3 old gangsters who are just about to retire and get off scot-free on one night sort of get a dark night of the soul and kind of get visited literally by the sins of their past. So it's kind of a horror story set in Los Angeles, and we did that last year with Lawrence Campbell drew it, and it's a really it's a create your own book. So again, like you said earlier, you can kill them off quite happily, and it's sort of a homage to sort of some of our favorite films, really.
Brilliant. So before we finish up, my last couple of questions. Actually, speaking of Old Haunts, can anyone pick that up from their local comic book store?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a trade paperback, came out in February, I believe. So it's from AWA Studios. So yes, they definitely can.
And brilliant. So moving on, like I said, some more brilliant segue skills. So if you could work on any comic in the whole history of comics with any character, what's your dream comic?
I think if it was a superhero book, I mean, I got to write Action Comics for a few issues. I do love Superman. I'm more than happy to do that. I mean, it's I have another go at that. In terms of ones I never wrote, I wrote members of the Fantastic Four. I'm not sure I'm the best suited person for the Fantastic Four comic. I think Marvel should give that to Al Ewing, definitely. But I just because I always loved the Fantastic Four as a kid, I'd write Fantastic Four, I think.
Favorite member?
Oh, I love them all. They're all brilliant. I like the Thing. The Thing's great.
Yeah, he's very great, and his name especially, I think it says all you need to know about him. The Thing, and I think you seem to write a lot of the bigger characters like Killer Croc, the Thing. So yeah, I wonder who'd win in a fight. I'm sure they just become best friends, like I said, because like we touched on, Killer Croc's 2 is a metaphor for happiness. You see, he's actually a very lovely character. You see, like I don't know how we've come up with all this just in one interview. So yeah, have you noticed improvement as a writer? Like, do you look back at some of your earlier work and think, oh, I can't believe I did that, or I should have done that better? That's not me calling you a horrible writer.
No, it's I mean, I think when you start out, you don't really know what you're doing, and you're just kind of floundering around. And so as you write more, you learn a lot more about craft and writing structure and all those really important things. And your work probably gets tighter and better, and you just don't overwrite as much. And but then there's a balance. You've also, when you look back at your early stuff, you can see a lot of energy in there, which perhaps isn't there so much in some of your later works. So, and there are very often, like, I don't do this often. I don't, but if you go back, if you do read something of yours you wrote a long time ago, feels like another person wrote there. You kind of, who wrote this? Which is kind of nice, really.
Smart.
But I know, who drew this? Did I draw this? I must have drawn this. I must be really good at art. I don't know. So yeah, it's you. I think I'm a much better writer now than I was years ago. But I will. There's stuff I wrote years ago, but I probably couldn't write now, and there's great positives in that as well.
And my last and final question: if anyone's looking to get into comics, what advice would you have for them?
Well, we can't do it right now because of COVID, but go to conventions, go to comic conventions, just talk to writers, talk to artists, talk to editors, and just learn how these guys do it. And if you do go to conventions, you find you make friends along the way, and those friends tend to end up working together on different projects or pitching for different things, and you come up as a community, basically, as a group. So do that. But also, I mean, look, if you want to write, or if you want to, you've got to learn the rules. You've got to learn the sort of like the structure, writing structure, and you don't just sit down and go la 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 la, oh, there's a story, gone, So I would suggest, reading books on story structure, how to write screenplays. There's lots of them. You can use a lot of the same rules and sort of, and take them into your comic writing. Look up comic scripts. There's a ton online, and see how people write their comic scripts and how the best writers write, and just sort of you can pick up top tips from that. And it's exactly the same with artists. If you want to draw comics, you've got to do the legwork. You've got to do the rules first. You look at the greats and people like Alex Toth and sort of, and basically, you've got to. It's like going to school or going to college before you actually go into professional life. But go to comic conventions. They're good fun, and you'll have a great time, and hopefully we'll all be back doing that pretty soon.
Here's hoping. And actually, I don't think we could end it on a better note. Before we finish up, is there anything you'd like to talk about or promote?
I should talk about my latest thing out, which is, I will find a copy now if I can. I've got a Judge Dredd graphic novel. Hang on.
You have to find it. It has to be very snappy with it, as you can see. Oh, is that it?
I'm back. Yeah. So this is my latest, and it came out, I think, last week or the week before, at End of Days. So I will promote this, if I can promote one thing, Daniel, because it's new and shiny. Look, there he is. He's
hasn't
so
been
happy.
Rude, He's so delighted. You can see the big grin on his face. So can they pick that up from the 2000 AD store? Yeah,
the 2000 AD web shop, or you should be able to get it from your local comic shop as well. And it's got beautiful art by Colin McNeil and Henry Flint. And it's basically Judge Dredd versus the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. It's the end of the world, and Dredd's got to take a small team in a spaceship, and they've got to go and find the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and kill them in order to save the world. So there you go. Judge Dredd, End of Days.
I suppose you could say it's a Suicide Squad.
You could say that, but I couldn't possibly.
It's not at all. But yeah, everyone, make sure to go check it out. If I do find a link for it, it will be down in the description. But are you on Twitter, Facebook, or anything like that?
I've been kicked off Twitter today because my account's been compromised. But I am on Twitter if I can get my account back. I'm at Rob Williams 71.
Rob Williams 71. And brilliant. And thank you again, Rob, for coming on. I'll talk to you a little bit after I finish this recording. But thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe because I'm desperate. Go donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. There'll be a link for that in the description. But thank you guys so much for watching, and check out Rob's work at your own discretion. There's a lot of Marta talk, but once you get past that, it's actually not so bad. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And Rob, any closing comments, anything you'd like to say to the millions upon billions of people watching this?
No, I just think it's brilliant you do this, Daniel, and I think you're genuinely really, really good at it, man. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciated it.
It was my absolute pleasure, and I'll talk to you just a little bit here. So yeah, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.